Hey folks, welcome to a Thursday edition from Where God Sits. What is it? June 11th, 2020. I see some folks coming on here, joining on. Oops, a lot of new songers. Almost spilled my water. A lot of new songers coming on. Everybody survived the storm from last night. See Kathy, Kelly, Jody, Wendy, Debbie. Um, Kathy is still not feeling well, so please, everybody, please pray Kathy gets over whatever she's fighting. So I hope you're doing well today. This is episode 56 of the Daily Dose of From Where God Sits. So the plan going forward is going, at least for a while, tentatively, we'll try it and see what happens, is 10 o'clock instead of 12:11 starting next week. And we'll do it 3 days a week. And so the plan is most of the time it'll be Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. But you have to stay tuned, pay attention in case I've got a conflict. You know how life is, sometimes the unexpected stuff or things. So maybe switching dates. So I don't know how Facebook works, but if you can set an alert to see when I schedule the live video, then you'll be ready. I see Delora all the way from Ohio, Springfield area. So Kelly, no storms? Well, we had some pretty major storms, a lot of power outages around here. But now we're good. So if you saw the uh, post for scheduling a live video, here's the picture. This is sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean, Corolla, North Carolina. This is from our trip last week to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And for some reason, as I've gotten old, I wake up early. So at the end of the week, I was waking up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, got up, walked over to the beach, about a 10-minute walk away, and enjoyed the sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean. Not only as I get older do I wake up early, but there's something about the sky over the last few years. I mentioned it before. The clouds, the sky, the formations, the sun, the moon. It just God's creation, God's beauty in that realm has really captured me. All right. Some other people. Hi, Pam. Good to see you. Katie, Rob Trammell, all the way from Michigan. All right, a couple of things that are fun but have a little bit of truth to them. So the theme today we're going to be talking about is expectations. And perspective. So, from where God sits, all of these are about getting God's perspective from where God sits, trying to see life from where He sees it, live life from His vantage point. And a lot has to do with expectations and your perspective. So here's something I saw on Facebook. In fact, my mom put shredded carrots in my Jello, so don't tell me about your rough childhood. Yeah, my grandma used to make that, and I thought, man, I like carrots and I like Jello mostly with fruit in it, but you mix those two, carrots and Jello. Sorry. So yeah, I had a rough childhood. That's just horrible stuff, right? Another one. Yeah, you like that? I see some laughter, some thumbs up. And I thought this was appropriate because of the storms we had coming through and the year that we've had. Sounds like thunder outside, but with the way 2020 is going, it could be Godzilla. Yeah, 2020 has been an interesting time. Well, what are we learning? Here's a couple of quotes that I pulled. Molly Griffith, who is Alicia Frick's mom, and they worship with us sometimes. She said, I'm learning that my hair is a lot grayer than I imagined. Yep, that's one thing that we learned. All about hair. I'm not, people are getting on me about talking about my hair, so I'm not talking about my hair today. I just let Molly do it. My hair is not grayer than I imagined. It's just gray. And then Kathy, she's on here. She had posted a number of different things that she learned, but this connects with what we're going to be talking about, that fear itself can be so much worse than the thing that we are afraid of. Learning that fear itself can be so much worse than the thing that we are afraid of. And that's so true, because the fear takes over. And to go along with that, that God really is the only constant in our lives. Absolutely. Absolutely. Rob says he had breakfast with Mark Richardson. Wanted to know he was very disappointed in you putting on the. I didn't leave it on. I didn't leave the University of Michigan cap on for long, Rob, but I did as promised. All right, so our do not be surprised moment, and then what I sense God saying kind of go together today. So let's talk first about our do not be surprised moment, which is Jesus said, be wise as serpents, innocent as doves. Face the truth with wisdom, but love everyone. So we should not be surprised when people don't make sense. And this is one of the things that I'm seeing in so many areas of all that's going on. And it does seem like there's just so much going on in our world. So the events, so many unsettling things. So the events of this year with the coronavirus, the responses of fear, shutting down, some people having to deal with loved ones passing away or people being very, very ill. And then the reactions to it, that fear reaction that Kathy had talked about, is unsettling. And then you have the unrest, the current unrest that is happening with the George Floyd murder, which is terrible, just as all of the murdering of policemen and the violence and all the reactions of violence, and then the contradictions and the hypocrisy that comes out of it. So the protests of police killing, absolutely, but then turning around and the response of violence by who knows who, killing policemen, shooting policemen, the violence of yesterday I heard that in Seattle, protesters had taken over part of the courthouse, and one of the protesters was a council person, and then the hypocrisy of you got to wear a mask and stay away from one another, but then unless it's something that you want to be involved in, and then it's okay to be close to each other, and then the voices that we hear. Of that just don't make a lot of sense. That just people do not make sense. And so do not be surprised when they don't make sense. And so I'm thinking and pausing about how I want to so people, we should not be surprised when people don't make sense, because when you're living upside down, when you're living from this world reality, the earthly realm reality, you are seeing it from that perspective. You're not seeing it from the truth. And one of Satan's tools is not only lying, but deceit. And so the voices that we hear can be sincere voices, but when they're talking from this earthly realm reality, they're only seeing part of it. And the enemy can deceive so that they think they're telling the truth when in reality they're being very deceived. So we need to be careful. We need to not be surprised when people don't make sense, which leads us into what I sense God saying today, and that is expectations. Expectations. As you live your life, what are you expecting and from where are you expecting it? As you live your life, this is a very important issue because expectations cause us to be excited or disappointed. It causes us to be happy or sad. Our expectations. When you get together with pastors, there's Rob's talking about getting together with Mark Richardson, who is the state pastor in Michigan. And when you get together with pastors, you hear pastor talk. Now, one of the things that often comes up are the expectations that people have of pastors. And I've been at New Song for over 30 years, and people know that I'm not perfect, but there's still the expectation generally in our culture that pastors are perfect. They don't have any problems, that their life is easy, that they'll never do anything wrong. They'll never disappoint. They'll never say anything that is hurtful. And with those expectations like that, there's always going to be disappointment because of their unrealistic expectations. I remember some of you on here have been to youth camp with me, and I used to direct senior high youth camp at Whitehall Camp and Conference Center while my kids were in high school. And as a director, I did all the fun stuff and teased the kids, and then I spoke at the conferences and the Sunday evening services, used a lot of humor and counseled with the kids, and really by most of the campers, I was loved. People really liked me and they thought it was great. And then they would find out that one of my kids was one of my kids. My kids tried to travel under the radar. They tried to travel incognito and not let people know that the director was their dad, for most of them. And when other kids would find out, they would say, "Oh, I wish PH," that's what they called me, Pastor Herb. I wish he was my dad. It must be wonderful to live with a dad like that." And all my kids had to find a bucket to puke into. I mean, there was an immediate gag reflex there because they knew what they were living with, that I wasn't perfect. Kelly says I have zero expectations of me. Is that what you're saying? And so the expectations will determine whether we're disappointed or whether we're excited. So my question is, what are your expectations of the life that you're living? What are your expectations? So here's a question for you. Are you an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist? Are you an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist? As you look at life, what is your what is your attitude? Are you an optimist? You see the glass half full, and that things are going to get better, things are going to work out. Are you a pessimist? Someone who sees the glass half empty, and things are just going to get worse. Kind of the Eeyore, oh boy, everything's bad. It'll get, no matter how good it gets, it's going to get worse. Or are you a realist, striving to see it not half full or not half empty, just as it really is? Now, I'm not asking you to answer that necessarily, because it's kind of a trick question. Because as we're looking at trying to see life as God sees it, from where God sits, as we're trying to see life from His perspective, from the heavenly realm reality seated with Christ, none of those labels really fit, because they all look at life from an earthly perspective. They're looking at the glass as if it's sitting right in front of you. Here's my suggestion as we think about expectations, is that we become a faithist. I just made that up. I made that word up. Unless somebody checked, you can check the dictionary, maybe it's in there. But we don't need to be optimist or pessimist or realist. We need to be a faithist. And here's the question. What do you find yourself thinking and saying as you watch the earthly realm reality? All the events, the reactions, the contradictions, the hypocrisy in the voices. What is your reaction? I got a text from someone last night alerting me and asking how my kids that live in Seattle are with them, with all of the unrest out there. And at the end of the text, it said, I think we have officially entered the twilight zone. What is our expectations? So is your expectation, how can this be happening? And that's kind of what this person was saying in the text. How can this possibly be happening? How can it be that the whole world is turned upside down? How can it be that the responses to the pandemic have been craziness? How can it be that all of this violence is occurring? How can it be that the standards of life, the morals of life are going? How can this possibly be happening? Is that your reaction, or is it, well, of course this will be happening? You see, the first, how can this be happening, says that we have expectations of this life that are not realistic. The second response, well, of course it's happening. Well, of course there's going to be violence. Well, of course there's going to be hypocrisy. Well, of course there's going to be poor reactions and voices. Well, of course, because when we're saying it from above, from where God sits, we're not expecting this world to be any different than it is. And so I challenge you to be a faithist, or if you come up with a different word that would describe it. Instead of an optimist, pessimist, or realist, a faithist. That's the best word I come up with. Because a faithist is someone who is humble, recognizing I don't have it all figured out. A person who is surrendering, constantly surrendering to Christ, listening for his voice, and obeying him. So a humble, surrendering, listening, obeying Christ follower who is striving to see through God's eyes. 2 Corinthians 4:18, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. You see, the reaction of how can this be is a reaction of this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make any sense at all. And from an earthly standpoint, that's exactly true. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for people to be creating this violence. It doesn't make sense for people wanting to defund the police department as a knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't make sense until you look at it from the heavenly realm reality. And it does make sense because, and as we'll see, the world is acting like the world. But a faithist is a humble, surrendering, listening, obeying Christ follower, striving to see through God's eyes as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen, that are transient, they're temporary, but the things that are unseen are eternal. So what are your reactions? What is your reaction? Of course. Now, I want to encourage you to build that into your vocabulary. When something happens, you look at it and say, well, I'm disappointed. I don't like it. It's harmful. It's frustrating. But of course. So I think I'm going to install a door in my office that looks like this. Can you see it? I don't know that the person intended it to do that, but they installed the door upside down. But I would love to have that door in my office because every time I would walk in and out, it would remind me that we are striving to live right side up when we are living in an upside down world. Faith is. So here's what faith is. When we're talking about expectations, here are the expectations. People who are faithists, people who are striving to see life from where God sits and live life in step with him, expect upside down people to think and act like upside down people. Jesus said in John 10:10, the first half of the verse, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. So this world is under the authority, the control of the enemy, of Satan. And as a result, the whispering, whether they even realize it or not, the default setting is to steal, kill, and destroy. That's why when all of the protests happened around the country at first and the violence broke out, news cameras caught people looting and stealing and breaking windows and taking advantage of the situation. And I don't really think they were mostly the protesters. I think the protesters were trying to protest peacefully mostly, but the looters and those who were the vandals took advantage. Of course. Well, of course. Upside down people act upside down. I was telling Debbie Mazio a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the unchristian people in our lives. And I remember distinctly when I was 16 or 17 years old. My dad was not a Christian. He was emotionally abusive. He gave me grief all the time. And he just made my life hard. At about 15 years old, at 15 years old, I accepted Christ as Savior. I got very serious about my faith. Within a year, I sensed that God was calling me into the ministry. And so I was 16, 17 years old, and I was so frustrated because my life was so hard, and I was praying. I remember I was in the car praying on Hominy Ridge Road. And I could tell you exactly the place. It's as you come up the hill, I could tell you the exact place when I sensed God say to me, why would you expect your dad to act like a Christian when he's not? And it was like the light bulb went on, going, well, of course. It makes all the sense in the world. Changed my expectation, changed my attitude, and changed my ability to deal with the things that I had to deal with in the home I was in. Yeah, Katie, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Daniel's response, of course. Well, of course, of course. And so when we are seeing life from where God sits and we're living life in step with His Spirit, we expect upside down people to think and act like upside down people. So lower your expectations, Christ followers of the world. Don't expect people to act like Christ followers when they're not. Faithists will also expect life to be hard, disappointing, frustrating more. Let me ask you, is life hard? Yes. Is life disappointing? Yes. Is life frustrating? Yes. Is life even more than that? Yes, 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 yes. Because, and we don't, when we expect that. So John 16:33, I put up a picture a while back that said the most unclaimed promise in the Bible is this. Jesus said, I've said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. In the world you will have tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world. And in that picture, it has the most unclaimed scriptures. In this world you will have tribulation. And you mean like little things. And I think when we read that, we think of trouble. We might have to take a cut and pay. We might have a car accident. We might have those. No, tribulation is hard, 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 hard. It's really, really hard. In this world, you're going to have tribulation. And the tribulation that Jesus was talking about, he was going to the cross. That's tribulation. Paul was going to be arrested, and eventually they believe he was beheaded after being in prison for years. That's hard. People will be rejected and disowned. That's hard. That's the kind of hard. And so when we are faithists, we expect life to be hard, disappointing, frustrating, and more. And when we expect it, then we don't expect the world to deliver, which brings us to the next one, and that is we don't expect the earthly realm reality to provide what it cannot. So some of the complaining that I'm hearing from the world, but also from Christians, reflects the fact that they are expecting this world, this reality to provide the satisfaction, the meaning, the hope, the help, the strength that it is not possible for it to provide. That's why people are always striving for more, something different, because they're looking to this world. And that's part of the response to the coronavirus. That's part of the problem, is because people have treated death through this as something that we can control, we can avoid, and it's the enemy. And we have to do at all costs stay alive, because it's this life that matters most. It can't. This life, I want you to hear me very carefully. This life cannot provide what you have been created to have. It's just impossible. Christ followers must surrender expectations of this world. Do you hear me? If you are following Christ, you have to surrender the expectation of this world. So our expectation, if I do everything right, if I work hard at my job and I excel and I respect and I follow the rules, then my job is going to be there for me, and I'm going to have retirement, and I'm never going to get laid off. It can't deliver that. If I do everything right in my marriage, then I won't have any problems. If I do everything right in my relationships or with my kids or with my parents, then everything will be all right. No, this world cannot provide that. Got it? Don't expect this earthly realm reality to provide what it cannot. So, everybody depressed now? If we leave it there, it is depressing. But as I was preparing this, that's not what I wanted. I wanted you to see it as a faithist, as it really is from God's perspective. But I also want you to catch this. Hope. There's hope. So faithists expect Christ to satisfy, sustain, and see them all the way home. When you become a faithist, seeing life from where God sits, living life in step with His Spirit, then suddenly your expectations go beyond the religion that most people have. When they think of church, when they think of religion, when they think of God, most people think of rituals, going to church, saying prayers, doing the chores, doing the responsibilities that are expected of you, and they don't think of relationship. And most people don't expect Christ to satisfy and sustain and see them all the way through. So the second half of that verse, Jesus said, in this world you're going to have tribulation. Or I'm sorry, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what we see. But he says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Life that starts right here, right now, that satisfies at a soul level that is unexplainable, that Ephesians says that it exceeds more than you could even ask or imagine. I came that you may have life and have it abundantly. Not the physical stuff, but the internal stuff, the satisfying stuff. That's what faith is. We let go of our expectations of the world, but we raise our expectations of what Christ wants to do in us and through us and with us. And then finally, we expect faithists expects Christ to use them as his light, salt, and fragrance for upside down people. There is the expectation for those who are seated with Christ, living from his perspective, that while we're here, who we are will shine the light of Christ so that people can see Christ with understanding and truth. That he will use us as salt to flavor the world wherever we are. And he will cause us to be the fragrance, the aroma for people who are living in this upside down world. Now, part of the problem is that many upside down people who are living in this earthly realm reality, well, I wouldn't obviously not some, according to Jesus, most, because he said the way is narrow and few are those who find it. So the majority of people in your life won't necessarily want it. They might say they want it, but they're not willing to let go of this world in order to gain Christ. And as a result, they will push against you. They don't want it, they will reject it, and as they reject it, they will reject you. I've said from the beginning of this, so this is episode 56. I've been saying this for all these months. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I just sense there's something bigger happening in the heavenly realms that is making its way down here. And I think 2020 is showing it. It just seems like we're I even heard Andrew Cuomo, who isn't a Christian, in any way, but expressing frustration that just about the time that they're going to open up New York, then all of this violence breaks out. Well, of course, it's frustrating. So I sense there's something bigger coming. And when that happens, there's going to be a delineation. There's going to be a division between those who are striving to follow Christ and those who are living this earthly realm reality, whether they realize it or not, are being led by the enemy. And when that happens, there will be rejection, there will be hurt, that is going to be really hard. So what do? Let's put feet on it, because it doesn't help to just have this in our heads and know it in philosophy or theory. Our response, and I talked about it yesterday, is the little things, right where we are. And my full intent was to follow up with that and talk about all week. I was going to talk about how the little actions, the little attitudes, the little compromises, the little obedience makes a big difference. But then I just, as I was praying last night and this morning, I just sense we need to pause and see and take another look and see what we're supposed to do. But it is in the dailiness, in the small things, that we need to do these. We need to work hard. We need to work hard to see through God's eyes. From where God sits is all about seeing through God's eyes and living in step with Christ and living in step with the Spirit. Seeing through his eyes will not come by superficial, I go to church, I read the Bible a little bit, I talk to Christians a little bit. We are far more upside down than we realize. Far more upside down than we realize. And God has been working on me, and the more that I see, the more that he transforms me, the more that I see that I'm not even as right side up as I thought I was, that I've got so much farther to go. So we have to work hard. And a part of that is spending more time leaning into him than listening to the news. More time leaning into him, striving to get his truth in our hearts and our minds. Not just, and this requires us being together, encouraging one another, praying together, walking together, iron sharpens iron kinds of experiences. We need to work hard. The only way to make any sense of much of what is happening is to see it through God's eyes. And you will know that you're getting closer to it when things happen, and your knee-jerk response, your immediate response will be, well, of course, of course, of course. I got some communication yesterday that just drives me crazy. But my response was, well, of course, the devil's going to try to use everything he can to try to get us discouraged. We need to live in step with God's Spirit. We need to work hard to live in step. So the struggle is there's all the stuff that we're seeing, the burning police cars and violence and pandemic and reopening and all these kinds of things we can do little about. So yesterday I talked about be aware, but don't get obsessed with it, but focus on the little things that you can do. So today, here's a thought. I wish I had time to develop this. Maybe I'll spend time on another one. Every day, start your day with a journal or with a card or something in your Bible, asking yourself, God, what do you want me to do today? What in the next hour do you want me to do? What in the next relationship do you want me to do? What in the next interaction? What in the next project? living in step, working hard in everything to pause and be led by God's Spirit. And then finally, to love all people without exception. To love all people without exception. Friends, stop getting into arguments on Facebook. Okay, there I said it. Stop. Just stop. Nothing is solved and nobody's opinion is changed through Facebook in the arguments. Focus on loving other people. That's our job. Our job is to be the light of Christ, to be the salt of the earth, to be the fragrance and the aroma of Christ, and to represent Him. God is not a Republican or a Democrat. God is not in favor of the West Coast or the flyover area of the country. God loves everyone, and our responsibility is not to be judges or critics. Our job is to love, and that is to do what is best for everyone in every situation. I'm not talking about emotion. I'm talking about acting the way Jesus would act in every situation. So if there's not a person in your life you have the right to not love. And not even talking about hate or be angry or bitter about, because God is the judge. He is the one. We are just ambassadors, and the battle, the primary reality, is happening in the heavenly realm reality and is being lived out here. And when we see from that angle, then the Sermon on the Mount makes sense. And when Jesus says, "Love your enemy," it makes sense, because they're not other people are not our problem. Other people are not our enemy. Our battle is not about that. Jesus did not get caught up in the external issues of his day, hardly at all. But every day he was about loving people as he walked in step with the Father, doing exactly what the Father wanted him to do. There's never, ever a reason not to be Christ to others. So I want to end with this. God offers hope. God offers confidence. God offers joy. God offers a sense of purpose and mission in this life all the way to the end. And he offers a sense of meaning and satisfaction that is beyond description. So instead of being an optimist or a pessimist or a realist, let's focus on being faithists. The devil wants to destroy our hope. God wants to expand it and multiply it. Our loving heavenly Dad offers us so much more than we can imagine. So work hard, see through God's eyes, live in step with Him, and love everyone without exception. Lord, it's so easy for us to get discouraged when we look around us because, God, we were born in this world, our expectations were in this world as we were growing up, and a long time as we've been adults. And quite frankly, haven't been a lot of Christian voices telling us different. But God, I pray for each one of us, every person that is listening now will listen to this. God, I pray that you would do whatever it takes in our lives to transform our sight in our lives. Move us more and more and more to seeing life through your eyes. Walk us through this day now. Give us opportunities to love. I pray that you would put us through whatever training and challenges that we need to walk through. God, we trust you. We know that you know best. Fill us with your hope and satisfaction. We love you. God, draw us to yourself. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. So I hope that this has been an encouragement to you, a challenge to you, and that you will focus on living with hope this day. All the stuff that you're hearing, just recognize. Well, of course. So I never take. And so as we close, let me just read this one more time. This is one of those hallmark verses for us faithists. We do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light and momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. Let's take that with us. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Please like and share if this has been beneficial. I just sense that God, this is not about me. It's not about my voice, but I just feel like God is revealing things to me that a lot of people need to hear. So like and share and like, get it out there as much as possible. If you have other ideas about what days and times and things like that. But as I said at the beginning, my plan at this point is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 10 a.m. for live, and then you can always watch them on YouTube or on Facebook after that. And then this evening, join me at 7 o'clock. We're going to be looking at Daniel chapter 10, if you want to look at it ahead, and it's a message for our day of how Daniel made a difference in the heavenly realm reality, the same kind of difference. And as he experienced that difference, he experienced God in ways that I don't know about you, but I want to. All right, well, it's went a little bit long today. Someday I'll get this figured out how to do this more compactly, but I haven't yet. So have a great day, and I'm not saying happy. Have a great day. Be bold, be full of confidence and hope. Love y'all. Bye.